Do you remember when Netflix first started offering streaming services? It was 2007, and the pitch was very alluring. For just $9 a month, you could watch what you want when you want with unlimited streaming of your favorite movies and TV shows entirely ad-free. At a time when cable TV was still the norm, this was an undeniably tempting alternative. Cable was clunky. It was expensive, costing between $50 and $100 a month, depending on which channels you wanted. It was riddled with ad breaks that were often as long as the shows themselves. And if you happened to miss the time when your show was playing, well, too bad. You missed it. So yeah, Netflix seemed revolutionary by comparison. But over time, things started to change. Prices increased year after year. The selection of content began to dwindle, and competitors started to pop up left and right, all of whom secured licenses for different shows and different movies, meaning that you'd most likely need to subscribe to multiple services in order to be able to watch everything you wanted. And then most recently, they introduced advertisements for the less expensive plans. Now, nearly 20 years after streaming was first introduced as this groundbreaking technology slated to destroy cable TV, it has become exactly the same as cable TV, with the average US household spending nearly $70 a month on streaming services, many of which are chock full of ads. So, remind me again how this is better. We've seen similar cycles with companies like Uber, who first hit the market as a more convenient and significantly cheaper alternative to taking a taxi, only for them to become equally or more expensive than a taxi, kind of defeating the entire purpose of them existing in the first place. And how about Airbnb? What started as an alternative to hotels, where guests could have more space and amenities and enjoy the comforts of staying in an actual home at a more affordable price, eventually just turned into a price gouging competition, where now you're charged cleaning fees, but still expected to clean the place on your own. And consumables like toilet paper are rationed. Safety is questionable at best, and we won't even get into what all of these short-term rentals have done to the housing market. And yeah, all of a sudden, staying at the Marriott doesn't sound so bad. What we are seeing is the bait-and-switch marketing strategy at work, and we're all falling for it. Tech startups appear out of nowhere, offer us accessible and affordable solutions to our everyday annoyances, and then once they've gotten their teeth in our veins and captured the market, they pull the rug on us and laugh all the way to the bank, knowing that most people will happily keep forking over their hard-earned dollars either way, and then the cycle repeats. So, the question is, how did we get here? And also, why do we keep falling for this? To explain exactly why this is happening, we're going to break it down into 3 parts. Starting with debate. Every industry-disrupting company starts with a carefully crafted story that is specifically designed to make them seem like the hero we've all been waiting for. Like their product or service is almost a moral necessity to defeat an archaic system that has been bogging us down and ripping us off for years. Tired of being overcharged by your cable company? Netflix is here to save the day. Tired of haggling with cab drivers or nervous about getting into a car alone with a complete stranger? Order an Uber with a few taps and see exactly who will be picking you up and how much the ride will cost you up front with no games. We heard similar promises from companies like Amazon Prime and DoorDash, who promised to make life better and easier and more convenient, all for a too-good-to-be-true price. And at first, they absolutely delivered on their promises. The value-to-dollar ratios were undeniably attractive. The app interfaces were sleek, and the companies were bending over backwards to kiss your feet and ensure that you have an A+ experience every time. And so we gobbled it up. But as the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. And boy did they ever. Which brings us to part 2, the hook. So the 2 biggest draws to almost all of these services initially were the price and the convenience. Or more specifically, how much convenience you get for the price. As I said, it felt almost too good to be true, and that's because it was. These startups all operate more or less the same way. At launch, they need to be able to offer something extremely affordable in order to set themselves apart from their predecessors and convince people to give them a try. So, they start off by raising venture capital. Lots of it. And what exactly is venture capital? It's private equity, because of course it is. It's money pulled together from wealthy investors hoping to get in early on the next big thing and make a killing. Think about the show Shark Tank, for example. The sharks are all venture capitalists who invest money into up-and-coming businesses in hopes that they'll score big. So, companies like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Airbnb, Netflix, Spotify, Instacart, all those guys, they start by raising billions of dollars in venture capital before anyone has really even heard of them. Then they go to market and almost immediately blow through all that money by using it to subsidize the cost of their services, which makes their initial offerings very affordable. But here's the thing. Netflix was never meant to be $9 a month for unlimited streaming, and an Uber across town was never actually just supposed to be $10. These companies can't earn a profit when charging so little, and they've known that all along. But they use the capital they've raised to subsidize their own services to offset the cost initially, in hopes of drawing you in and having you become reliant on and addicted to their services. And it works. Now, if this describes you, if you feel like you're someone who's become more and more dependent on convenient services over time, it may not be entirely your fault. The fact is that as we go through life, our priorities and our schedules shift, and with that, so do our needs. Things like job changes, growing families, aging, and health concerns can all bring about a lot of stress. So yeah, it's understandable if sometimes you just need a break. Alright, now let's talk about the switch. If you've ever watched Shark Tank, you know that the sharks are rarely concerned about the merits or the quality of a product. At the end of the day, they are just investors, and they just want to maximize their profits by whatever means necessary so they can cash out in a few years' time, sell off their equity, and ride off into the sunset.
Okay, that's wonderful, but how do I make money off depressed people?
What happens to the company after that point is really of no interest to them. And as I've discussed in other videos in the past, this is the nature of private equity in general. So a year or two goes by and now all these companies are huge. They've successfully monopolized the market, making their predecessors and competitors virtually obsolete and making you dependent on their services. You've become so accustomed to just calling an Uber anytime you need to go anywhere. It's so convenient, it doesn't really even make sense for you to take public transit. And besides, it's only a few dollars more. Maybe you've started having your lunch DoorDash to your office every day, so you don't have to interrupt your workflow and your tummy grumbles, and your productivity has been through the roof as a result. Hell, maybe you've even canceled your Costco membership because you don't really need it with 2-day Prime shipping at your fingertips for just $6 a month. But there's a problem. They've run out of venture capital money, they blew through all of it, and it's gone. But as I said, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't caused by poor business decisions. This was the plan all along. They set the bait of low prices and got you hooked on the novelty and convenience. And now it's time for them to start making money so their investors can get their ROI. So they make the switch. They raise their prices a little, and then a little more, and then a little bit more again. And the service itself starts to decline. Netflix goes from $9 to $10 to eventually nearly $20 a month. And they introduce ads to the platform and ban password sharing. Amazon Prime goes from $79 to $99 to now $139 a year. And your 2-day delivery is more like 4 days a lot of the time. If you're lucky, you'll at least get what you ordered. But I ordered a replacement blade for my blender, and I was sent a bottle of calamine lotion. So Uber rides become prohibitively expensive, and drivers start demanding tips. No joke. I took an Uber for the very first time a few weeks ago when my car was being serviced and it cost me $15 to go 2 and 12 kilometers. I probably should have just ridden my bike or something. And speaking of tips and things being stupidly expensive, DoorDash starts adding service fees in addition to their delivery fees. And they mark up every item by 30 to 40% compared to what the restaurant actually charges. And your driver will spit in your food if you don't lock in a generous tip before it's even picked up. So all in all, you're now paying like $35 to have a cold, soggy burrito left on your doorstep, which may or may not have been spit in. All of these companies hit the market with something that was so novel and so convenient and so affordable, it was pretty much a no-brainer. They kept up the act long enough to get you hooked on their services, and then slowly transformed into the exact thing they claimed to be railing against, nickel and diming you all along in the process. And that was always the goal. Netflix never wanted to be better than cable. They just wanted to be the universal cable company. Uber never cared to be superior to cabs. They just wanted to monopolize the taxi industry. Same with Airbnb and all the rest. They never really cared to be better than the other guy. They just wanted to run the other guys out of town and take over. And once a company has successfully monopolized an industry, they then have the power to do whatever they want, because the competition is almost non-existent, and the public is so reliant on them that there are no consequences. The thing about convenience is that it's insanely addictive. We talk a lot about lifestyle inflation from a personal finance and budgeting perspective, but the real reason that lifestyle inflation is such a big problem is because deflating your lifestyle after you've inflated it feels almost impossible for most people. Taking the bus, for example, is fine. It's something we've all done probably at various points in our lives, and we made it work. But once you've become accustomed to driving or taking Ubers, public transportation feels like torture. You have to work around a fixed schedule. It takes way longer. Or it smells funny. The exact same thing can be said about a service like DoorDash. When you've gotten used to not having to cook or even go out to pick up food, DoorDash becomes something you rely on. You may have even scheduled your life around your dependence on it, choosing to fill your schedule with other things now that you don't have to allot time for making food. And these companies know that once people have been spoiled with the luxury of convenience, they'll probably never stop using it, even if they're being blatantly extorted. I've talked about this many times before, but I truly believe that all of this happens because most of us already have everything we need, and companies are no longer really able to innovate much as a result. So, when there's nothing valuable left to invent, the next obvious step is just to infiltrate and monopolize on something that already exists. We've had credit cards for decades, but buy now, pay later services are way better and interest-free, except for when they're not. Car rentals have been around forever, but Turo is cheaper and more convenient. Except that it really isn't. Hotels and motel have literally existed for centuries, but Airbnb is more comfortable and luxurious if you don't mind being spied on by property owners and having to do your own housekeeping while still paying for housekeeping. Hell, even IKEA has done the bait and switch, starting out as a place where you could buy furniture at a super affordable price if you were willing to pick it up and assemble it yourself. But now it's not even cheap anymore. Yet we're still spending our weekends fighting crowds and building bookshelves because we've gotten used to it. Like this cabinet right here I got at IKEA and it cost me $600. Actually, now they sell it for $700. And you might be wondering why on earth somebody would pay $6 or $700 for a mass-produced build-it-yourself particle board cabinet. And the answer is, I don't even know. But apparently I did, and a lot of other people have too. It's kind of just where we're at now. I say all of this not to tell you that you shouldn't take Ubers, or watch Netflix, or shop at IKEA, but just to point out that corporations are not your friend. They never have been, and they never will be. They're not there to do you a favor, or give you a good deal. If you genuinely get value from these products and services and you can truly afford them, go nuts, I guess. But I think it's important to be aware of the ways that we're being constantly squeezed by these companies at every opportunity, and know that there does come a point where the price they charge becomes disproportionate to the value they offer. Also, keep in mind that despite the underdog narratives that they like to lean on, by and large, these companies are not reinventing the wheel or innovating anything at all. And with multi-billion-dollar valuations, they can hardly be called underdogs. As always, they're just corporations being run by tech and finance bros, colonizing legitimate industries, flushing people out of their careers, and in many cases turning them into gig work, just so that they don't have to assume liability, or actually employ people and give them things like job stability and dependable salaries and health insurance. Meaning that while Uber drivers and Instacart shoppers are working tirelessly, often for less than minimum wage, investors like Gary Vaynerchuk and Kevin O'Leary are just getting richer off their backs. Isn't that how it always goes? If you like this video, like the video, subscribe for more. You can follow me on Instagram @accordingto Nicole. And let me know in the comments section down below if you use these services, and if you think that they provide good bang for your buck. If you feel like there's something that you're addicted to now and maybe just can't get away from. Or if you genuinely think that they're worth the money you spend. Really interested to hear your thoughts as always. Other than that, thank you guys so much as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.